Okay. Think that'll work. Alright, I am gonna go ahead and get started. I know I'm a bit late here, so I will allow everybody to catch up as the rewatch later on, or if you're gonna watch it for the first time. Gonna be showing how to do this bat here, and yesterday I had shown how to prepare your canvas for a piece like this. So right now I have my blackened canvas, and if you need a refresh on how to go about putting a nice base on your canvas, check out yesterday's video. Was the otter. That is up on my page, and I'm gonna actually be getting it up on YouTube ASAP. So if you need to, if you're gonna follow along with this, that will have how you coat this canvas here. So in the meantime, we're gonna get started on the bat. My phone is at a low power level right now, so I'm gonna try to work with it as best as I can and get this going. So the very first thing I'm gonna show here is the colors we're gonna use. They're gonna consist of white, yellow, blue, black, and brown. The white is hard to see because of kind of the lighting is washing it out, but it's right over here next to the brown. So these 5 colors. The first one we're going to start with is white, and I'm going to start with this brush as opposed to starting with this large brush. So see the size difference here? I'm going to go with this one. The very first thing that I like to do with a piece like this is kind of sketch out where I want the bat to be exactly. There's not any other thing besides that right now. So there's no pencil on here. There's no guidelines that I'm going to be going by. The only thing I'm going to go by is this example over here. And I'm going to start with the white. And I like to use the edge of this brush, to detail that out. So got the white on the brush. I'm just going to use the edge as I see it on here on the canvas. So I see the head is, it's set like this, not like this here. And that's actually how I'm going to put the head down. So it's a little further down here. What's cool about this canvas is no matter what mistakes you make on it, it's very easy to adjust because we have this black base back here. So if anything happens, you just take black and kind of push it back to where you need it. So this is a lot like sculpting in a way as opposed to painting something specific. So I'm just going to kind of put out the very basic lines of this bat here. I like to think small as opposed to large because I can always add if need be, but it's hard to take away. However, with this painting here with the black base in the background, that gives us more leeway so that if I were to think large as opposed to smaller, it is fixable. I can already tell that the face is a lot larger here than it is over there, so I'll show how to adjust as we go along. In the meantime, I'm going to make this body a lot smaller if possible. And I'm already starting with these streaks, like the very hairy, furry streaks. If you go back to my bumblebee video or any of my previous videos that have creatures that have any type of fur, this is that same technique that we use where it's just real wispy. We're wisping it out lightly with this brush to make a nice kind of foundational fur. Let me make sure I get the whole body in here. So I'm just gonna start with some shapes, some lines. That's where the feet are gonna end. That's where the feet are gonna end. You can bring them as close together as you like or as far apart. This comes up in a bit of a swoop. Swooping that out. And for now, I'm just going to fill all this in. This is another base coat on top of a base coat. Anytime you do a black background and everything is covered on the canvas, it helps to put down a white base coat for your colorful image so the colors will actually pop out. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at a lot of really dull tones and constantly battling this canvas to try to pull out those colors. So I like to put down a base coat, let it dry, and then work on top of that. Alright, I'll put in the ear real fast. There is an ear in the back. I left it pretty dark because it's further away and it's going into kind of a darkness. But let's shape up this face real fast so I can show the beginning stages of how you can sculpt your piece. I come back in with a clean brush that has no paint but a little bit of wet with the water. I'll start to move this paint around. So that's step one. For taking off any mistake. You just keep doing that. But you can see I'm leaving this kind of this foggy wet paint there. Sometimes I'll just take my cloth and wipe it off. This cloth had been used very, very much, so it doesn't have a lot of soft space anymore. You can wipe it off if you like, but the majority of this painting I honestly just dipped into my black paint and I put it back. There's nothing in the background that I need to stay super consistent with other than one color, and that makes this very easy to manipulate the way that I want. So I got a smaller head. The body is as large as I want it to be. This area with the more furry, hairy hair is how I want it pretty much. So let's continue on with putting down this base. The next part I'm going to go with is the wings. Or my bad, not the wings. They do have little arms that extend down to little hands, you know, right here before their wings. And that is actually where we're going to go next. So kind of from the hairline here is where I'm going to start to bring it down. And I'm going to continue the fur a little bit. The arm's a little bit furry. And then I'm going to extend it to a joint. And I'm just going to bring it straight up and around. And then I can fill in the rest of the arm. It's not too much. I really just did a little kind of circular motion here just to give myself an idea of where the hand's going to be later on, the little fingers that they have. Same thing over on the other side here. It's actually going to come from over here. It won't be as long. It'll be pretty short. It's further away. But the same idea, it just kind of comes out and then it goes up. It's okay that it's a little dark like that. Like I said, it's further away. It's going to be a part of the darkness that's happening. I'm not really too concerned with that over there. If you want to do that with a smaller brush, if you want to do any of these with a small brush, feel free to do so. Hi, Alana. But whatever brush you're comfortable with, I would suggest using. Not everybody's comfortable with a large brush like this, and I'm aware of that. So use the brush you're comfortable with. If it's smaller, if it's larger. I mean, sometimes people like to do these kind of details with larger brushes because they have certain ways with like edges of brushes and you know, different techniques and maneuvers that they use. So whatever brush you're comfortable with, please use that. Hey Dennis, thank you. Alright, so we're gonna start heading over here to these wings. I'm gonna explain kind of their shape as we go. But the very first step I like to start with these wings, I found some hair I wanted to fill in, I'm sorry. It's actually gonna be right above this arm, and it's gonna kind of follow that arm. It's gonna stay pretty close to it, and it's just gonna kind of sweep over top of it and carry off the canvas. And now for the other wing, it's pretty much gonna do the same. It's gonna stay real close. Top of it is real close to, especially since it's further, even closer to that other arm. And it's actually going to continue up. And then it's going to round off, carry off the canvas. Yes. And they have, I'm not sure what these are exactly, but there's a little kind of like a, I'm really not sure honestly, but there is this part of their wing that exists that you want to add as well. I should have looked it up and kind of learned, but I did not. So you want to add those for sure. You don't want to forget those. Very important part of the wing. Couldn't tell you why, but they are. Alright. And this, honestly, it should stay a little more rounded. I kind of just threw it off. We're going to stay rounded with that. But again, this is a good point where I can show how that we fix our mistakes. It's real easy. Take some black, cover that back up. Problem solved. So I don't expect anybody to be just throwing lines down like this perfectly and just you know, getting it spot on the first time. So once I am putting the colors on, with the bat is where I saw I had more of that sculpting technique coming on, and I think it'll be easier to show at that point kind of what it is you want to do. Let's say that you don't like this stomach is just completely round, and they have some different curves that happen in between. So I'm going to take some of this black here. I'm going to kind of push it in at those spots. What I mean by push it in is brush stroke that in there, dry brush it, kind of scrub a little bit with the brush. It is going to be darker down here at in this area as well, so this is quite fine to do regardless. I'm going to come back over top with white to kind of set in where I want these lines to be. There's going to be one, and then it's actually going to come in here. So all of this right here that I just kind of cut off, that's what I'm going to take out. And again, you can either do that with your slightly wet brush and then drying it with a cloth, or you can take your black and just push that in. But always make sure that you come back the direction that you coated your canvas with. So when I did the black background here, it was always going to side. So if you come in here and you go up and down, you're going to be able to see that later on. Make sure that you come back in with your brush carefully and just bring that side to side again. It's got to even out. Alright. So I got a little bit more of the body shape that I was going for. We're going to finish off these wings really fast and coat them in. Even though the wings are really dark, we still want to give them a nice base coat so that the colors that are on them will still show through pretty nicely. So, this wing, I kind of eyeballed it and I brought it down here. If that doesn't work out, you know, we can always tweak it. It's going to come around. It's going to come all the way down here. So, I really don't like how this comes inward. It's not supposed to come inward, it's actually supposed to go outward. So that's an easy tweak. I almost imagine holding a ball of clay and, you know, I am shaping things the way that I actually want them, but it just so happens to be I'm using a brush. And it's not clay, it's on a canvas. So, freely, I'm just really gonna mess with the shape here. I'm just gonna tweak this to the shape I need it to be. It's gonna stop about there. And I can see exactly where I want to cut this off at because of the brush strokes I made, which is why I always say it's very important the directions you take with your brush, because you're going to be able to tell exactly what is where. So I can tell that this right here is what I don't want. I left it kind of foggy just so everyone can kind of see what I'm doing. So I am going to coat that back and get rid of that. So take your time with this process. It might, it might not be, the first try. It might take a few, and that's okay. That's a whole part of this technique. It's a very, it can be a time-consuming one if you let it. And even still, I might be tweaking this wing yet. But for now, we're going to go back over to this other wing and start putting it in. I'm going to follow that down. Realize it comes about there. But even if it doesn't It'll be fixable later on. It's going to come in to another point, and it's just going to disappear behind the body there. I'm going to put the body back that I just lost. So far so good. I'm happy with this shape. Good with what's going on. Even if there are things I want to change eventually here, this is a good base to start with. This is a good foundation. I'm going to take this off right here. Alright. So I do recall I didn't actually cover the entire inside of the wings. What I did was I came up here to this that I didn't know what it was called, but this is actually where the folds in the wings start. So from there I take a line straight down here to this point. And that's going to be the very same on the other side. It's going to come from here and it's going to come down to this point. And it's also going to stem off from there and come to this point. So it's a very, very important part of their wing. Apologize that I have no idea what that's called, but this is very trivial, very important for the bat. You want to keep them as straight as possible. You can come back in here with a little bit of wet brush, and as you're brushing, you kind of push the paint forward to that line. That's going to come in handy later on as well to show some dimensions in this wing. So it's a good point to make now. Take it in your mind. It's one of those techniques where you let the paintbrush work for you. You let the paint on the canvas also work for you. Do all that work for you instead of having to struggle with it for an hour on one little piece, trying to make it do something you want it to do. So this is a good point for that for sure. By pushing this paint forward, I'm allowing this side to get what it needs, and I'm allowing that individual streak to get what it needs. And it'll be more apparent later. Like right now it might be kind of confusing. Bear with me. But as I go, you'll see it unfold as needed. So at this point, I'm looking for the driest places on the bat here, and it might be right in here on the stomach for the most part. So I'm going to start laying down some of the colors of the stomach here, and what I use is the brown and the yellow. A little bit of brown, a little bit of yellow. What I noticed was that the mane, if you call it a mane, all of the head hair and the head itself is darker than the body. So I keep it lighter down here to be safe, so that later I can go darker. And then if I need to tweak it down here, it'll be easier to take it darker than it is to take it lighter. So I'm gonna stay pretty light with this color I'm using, this mixture of brown and yellow. It'll be more of this gold happening with a little bit of brown in it. And the darkest part of this is probably going to be mid-stomach. I'm just going to honestly swerve it in here like I'm doing the fur. There's a little bit of texture happening because it's taking off some of the white paint and showing some of the black through it. And I like that. I think that, you know, that works for this piece. That works for the under hair, especially like if you were to take this painting and go full detail with it. It'll give you a nice undercoat for your bat. I hope this is seeable. It looks like it's kind of bright on there. That's not too bad. That's about accurate to what I'm seeing. Alright, so darker on the stomach down here, especially down in this area. I'm not going to worry about that just yet. I'm just going to worry about getting on kind of the medium coat, the actual kind of color. And I'll worry about lights up here and darks down here later. So for now, just keep it simple. Keeping it furry. These bats are real soft. These are the flying foxes, which I'm so glad was recommended, because foxes are my favorite, and I wanted to do bats, but I didn't want to do just any bat. I really wanted to do one that kind of stuck out to me and to others that I've noticed. Now, these guys are pretty adorable. Down below, you can actually keep it pretty dark. I'm really not worried about anything down here just yet. I'm just going to keep it dark. This will be kind of a mapping point in my mind where I'm going darker with the colors to realize that later on this is going to be even darker. So it doesn't really matter what color you use down here. It could be pretty dark if you like. If you want to stick with what you've been doing, then you can do that too. But I'm just making sure it comes out to fur. Lots and lots of fur. Fur that brush. Alright, so I'll worry about, like I said, the darks and the lights up here later on when that's a little bit more dry. If you want, you can also fill in dark down here for now. Regular brown. Make it furry. A lot of that's going to get covered up with really dark anyhow, so I'm not really super worried about it. And then up here, we're going to stick with just the brown for the head and the neck area. Like I said, this is going to be darker than the body, so if you have to add yellow at any point down here, you can, to brighten it up. Or let it dry and we'll add white and yellow later. We don't have to overcomplicate it and keep working where it's too wet to work. So let's hit the dark brown up here. If you want to add some blue to that dark brown, you can. Just to darken some spots up. If you want to add a pinch of black to the brown to make it darker, you can do that as well. I like the blue because it keeps it interesting to look at. We already have a black background, so as much as he's going to be blending into that later, I really still want to have something nice to look at on his fur to help him stand out. And blue, can't go wrong with blue. Not worried about his arms just yet. I'm just going to leave them where they are for now. I'm just going to focus on the face. You can see I'm taking whatever direction that comes at me. So I'm going to go around his head. I'm going to take that slant. I'm going to take that other slant at his snout. I'm going to keep it all rounded in the face. All these directions really help to keep everything intact. if you'd like, you can actually hit the ears now as kind of a base. And I would add black, honestly, to that mixture of blue and brown. Just to throw on a foundation of the ear so far. Something we can work with later. And again, if you want to go with a smaller brush, you can. I realize I have done all of this with the same brush so far. Don't feel like you need to do that. Alright, so the body is at a nice place where I'd like to have it for now. We're going to let that kind of simmer for a little while and dry up and give us time to work on some wings, which will give us time to come back and work on the body some more. So to start out with the wings, I didn't want to just go in with black, and I didn't want to just go in with some super light color. So I went with the kind of alternative, and I added brown, and I added a little bit of yellow, and then I added black to that. You can add a little bit of blue if you'd like. And you get this kind of dark foresty bluish brown. I don't know if you can see that very well. And I start actually on this side of the wing in here, just to get comfortable with all the motion that's going to be taken in the wings. And I'm staying on this edge like this. The brush is like that. And I'm going to stay along these lines, just like we were doing when we were pushing the white against them. We're going to stay along with that edge. And just fill in each of these kind of triangular shapes that are the inside of the wing. If it helps you to break things down into shapes, that is a very good thing. It helps you actually to stay inside of lines when you're trying to stay inside of lines. I'm going to stay along this edge as well over here. It's okay if you hit it a little bit, but try to stay on the outside of it. And I'm trying to fill kind of all of it. I don't want these white lines to be showing at all. I really want to cover those up as well. And we pretty much do this for each side of these wings. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Staying on the side of that line. Bringing it around. And as I'm adding, if you run out of paint from your mixture, that's alright. Honestly, I like that as opposed to staying solid the entire time. If you like to stay solid, feel free. I don't like to do that because there's way too many things happening when light hits something, or dark hits something, or just in general. There's a lot of colors happening all the time with everything. So I like to switch it up and work it in to what's going on. And I mean, if it needs adjusted, you just keep mixing these colors, and I'm adding blue and black again. It might not be the same as the first time, but I don't need it to be, because there's so much happening while this bat is flying in the air. Too many factors to take into consideration for it to be solid, in my opinion, and in my paintings. But if that's something that sticks out to you to stay solid, feel free to do that. And that's not to say it's not going to look good or it's not going to look right. It's just kind of a personal preference. Everybody has one of those. I'm going to stay around the little hand that is here, the little arm. Up against that line, this one too. Very soon we're gonna see why we did that, but we're not there just yet. Just focused right now on filling in this wing. Now, while this is wet, we can actually start doing some of this defining certain areas. And I'm actually going to start pretty much right here in the middle, where we started to begin with. I'm going to bring this right up to that line. But I'm going to leave this nice dark line right here for now, and I'll show you why after we put this line up here. I'm going to now cover this white line that I laid down. And now you can see that there's a nice division right here. There's a dark brown, there's a lighter brown. There's still this line happening right through there. And if you wanted to iterate it a little bit more, that's where I go to a smaller brush here. And I would mix something lighter, maybe a little bit with the white and the brown. Don't have too much paint on the brush. Definitely round it off on your plate if you need. Just have a little bit. I'm going to follow this line back down here. So it can stand out on its own. And what makes the difference here for this line is one side needs to be much darker than the other. So I'm going to take a little bit of black here. I'm going to follow with my pinky, or hold my pinky up here so I can follow with the brush. It's a little too wet. I'm going to bring it darker on one of these sides, preferably the side that is being more covered by the bat. Just going to follow that line right on the edge of the line I just put down. And that'll show that it's not just a separation here, it's also a little vein protruding from the wing. So that leaves on the other side of this, the other side of this wing here that I can go a little bit lighter. I took a little bit of yellow and brown. I don't want to go too crazy. I'm going to go lighter on the other side here so that it comes out even more so. And on the other side of this vein here, I just bring some light brown along the edge. And really brush that in. Really don't want to see super much of it, just a little bit. And then we're going to do the same thing pretty much on this side. So I want to go with the darker brown again. So my mixture of blue and brown and maybe a little pinch of black. And right along here is where I'm going to take it. Right up against that line there. Blend that into the other side here. So we get it from light to kind of getting darker. And we're going to go even darker on the other side. So over on this side, I took more black. And we're getting that nice separation again. That nice divisive line. We're not blending those two together. We're just pushing them up against each other. There's going to be a dark and there's going to be a lighter. And that causes this line right here to start sticking out a little bit. And then we take the same steps with putting that vein in. So a little bit of white, a little bit of brown. Don't have too much paint on the brush, round it off. I'm going to bring this vein down here. And once again, we'll have to add the dark aspects here. So I want one on this side as well this time. Last time we just chose one side. This time we'll have kind of both-ish. Put this dark line right on the edge. Bring that down and bring that vein out. I'm thinking I'll add a little bit of white to this black, make it more gray to come on the other side. Real dark gray. Blend that into the wing. Make sure it stays pretty prominent against that vein. I don't want to leave any of this wing unattended, so up here we're going to hit the top with just a dark brown. It's going to mix with this white. The white's a little bit wet, but I'm okay with that. You want to add black in between, you definitely can. Down here. Back to this dark brown for the rest of this. So I like to use just a lot of different shades of the dark browns, not all the same one, just to signify different things with this bat. We're gonna bring a little shadow underneath of this right here, so make sure that looks like it's going underneath. blend it out. Same thing on this side. I'm going to stay consistent here. That is bat wing number 1. And as you can see on the example over here, or you might not, I'm not sure. It's a little darker, and I did add little portions of yellow to it, but it didn't come out this bright on here. However, whatever you like to do, if you like to keep that darker, you can. Just stick with your darker browns. If you like to be a little lighter like this here, feel free to do that. I might add just a little bit more of the dark brown, just real fast, just to blend it in a little bit. And that's going to dry entirely different than how you see it right now. So, bat wing number 1 is done. Let's do this arm while we're on it. This arm back here is going to be pretty dark, so I'm going to stay with these dark browns with the arm, but I'm going to make sure I'm using my small brush. I'm going to make sure that I'm still doing that furry technique. Real wispy, just wisping it out. Can add a little white if you need it to stick out some more. Totally up to you. But it's going to be pretty dark back here. Even if you really just wanted to darken all that out, you just want to put down the strokes that you need to put down, and it really doesn't show much at all. You could do it that way. That's how it was done on the original. The arm is there, but it's really dark, so you can't really see it as well. And on the photo that I was going by, you really couldn't see it that well. I actually had forgotten to paint that in the first time because you couldn't see it. But I thought about it, I was like, well, you would see the arm. And then when I looked at the photo again, I saw the arm. But it was very, very, very dark. And to finish that off, I take my really small liner brush for the little claws that are on his hands. If you call them hands, paws, I'm not sure what they would be considered, but they look like hands because they have kind of a thumb claw that comes from down here, and then they have what looks like some finger claws that come up here. It's almost like a raccoon, I would think, or maybe like a squirrel, kind of how they are. But you just kind of work them on there, and I'll bring this closer so it can be seen. That's really wet. Alright, kind of getting that glare. Alright, there it is. So right up here is where I did the little hand and the claws, and on the tops of each of those you can add a little white streak if you like. So same brush, a little white streak really brings it out. But it doesn't need to be overdone, just slightly. Alright, let's head over to wing number 2 and do the same steps as before. So this is good practice. If you've not done this before, we're going to do it a second time. I'm going to bring in the dark brown all the way to the edge. So I got the blue, the brown, the black. All these are being accessed, I guess, for for the wing. And I like when it gets real kind of splotchy like that. You can work with all these different colors and putting them together, making something more natural happen as opposed to trying to force some solid color when we don't need a solid color. We just need the idea. This is dark brown, and it comes in many different variations because of the light. Not worried about mixing the same color, I just need something along those lines of the dark brown. Going right up against that line again. Keep these directions. And you can see how smooth it really came. Well, it's hard to see because it's very wet on the camera. It's very opposite for me, honestly. Over here, this wing looks wet, and this one looks really smooth. But either way, whichever one you're looking at that is the smooth, you can see how smooth it comes out as you're pushing that paint onto the canvas. You really want that to happen. And on the other side, I'm going to go a little bit lighter. There's an area up here that's really cool, actually. It's a good point to kind of start hitting that area too. So I'm using white and yellow now with my dark brown, and I'm just gonna make a triangle here from right there to over there. I'm gonna fill that entire space in. I'm gonna let that be the divider. Like this was the divider here with the dark brown, the light brown. This is the divider with this dark brown and almost yellow, kind of golden kind of color. But don't let that deceive you. It's just a lighter part of the wing being hit by some light. There's still a division happening. And instead of having to actually put these veins, this one was kind of shadowed by how dark it gets on the other side. So we're going to add the same kind of triangle with black on the other side here. We're going to follow it down. And we're going to let this be everything the wing is going to need it to be. Apologize that my terms are pretty terrible, but I'm hoping that this is understandable. So I want to go even darker over here with that. I don't want this to be very light at all, but you still want this dark shape here to blend out to your dark brown. So keep working that on the outside, not so much on the inside. On the inside you want to kind of put it down, and if you're able to leave it, but don't leave it gloppy. You don't have to keep that light either. You can actually darken it a little bit if you want to. I would honestly put some white in the dark brown itself and just take it down a few notches. Alright, so on the other side I'm going to go with a completely different brown that's still dark. So kind of what was going on in here, I am going to kind of push that in some on this side just so everything lines up, but the same thing is what I meant, that we're going to throw it on this side of the wing. So this color here is going to go over here. It's just a different variation of brown. It doesn't have to be this one. As long as it's different from the others that we've been using, that's good. Can blend that in there a little bit. If you still want, you can take this down a little bit. It's pretty bright. I wanted to make sure everybody could see this. It doesn't have to be this bright, but just so everyone was able to see the differences of the colors. Let me bring this over here. That way it's not so glary, but you can see the lighter brown, the golden. Doesn't need to be golden, it could be like a dark gray. Honestly, it's dark gray over here. Black in between, and it goes back to this kind of lighter brown. You could add a little bit of the golden to it if you like. But these triangular shapes are what make everything happen, and they're different shades of hue and value and all that also make it happen. I'm going to leave that golden. I kind of like that. It might not be as realistic as an actual one of these bats, but I like what's going on with this, so I'm going to kind of leave that in there. But again, we're going to come back to the top here. Very important part of the wing. The one I cannot figure out for the life of me what it is. And light brown. You know, that dark brown with a little bit of white. It's going to be up here. Small brush again. Obviously it's not going to be this large. I'm going to show how to go in here and kind of switch that up again. And add some black, and we're just gonna put that right under here. Firstly, we'll blend it in, but I'm gonna leave a trail up against that lighter brown up here as I'm blending. So I'm really only blending down here, and up top I'm gonna leave this nice thin line underneath of that part. I laid it down. I'm not going to blend up to that line. I'm just going to blend underneath of it. I'm going to let that be. Get some dark brown here again and come in under here. Alright, let's hit this arm. This time, the arm can actually match the body a little bit. Get the brown, maybe a dark brown, and then some lighter brown, and then some yellow, and mix those together to kind of get this in between these three colors, like the gold and the brown and the dark brown. I want something that has a little bit of all of them. And we're gonna continue this fur for the arm on the outside. it's okay to grab black and brown and kind of see what happens here. Maybe add that to some of the fur, add it to the arm. Just like the underneath of the top of the wing there, to bring the arm out, we're going to put a little shadow underneath of the arm once it's done. Let me throw some of these colors back in here. Alright, so got an arm, very good. Real fast we'll do the claws that are coming out. Again, it's like a little thumb here, thumb claw. Then we have some finger claws. If you like, you can throw some white lines on the top again to bring them out a little bit. But as I was saying, so we want to add some shading down underneath the arm. I'm just going to take black, and the exact same way that I lined underneath of top wing here is how you're going to do down here, right underneath this arm. It's going to bring it right out, but I'm not going to leave that line. Again, I'm going to leave the very top of the line there, but I'm going to blend out the outside of that line. Awesome. Well, hopefully that was seeable. So now it's a lot of just kind of detail filling in. Let's start with the eyes. My phone is pretty much at 10%, so I'm working with some time restrictions here. Let's start with the eye so we can get that out of the way. The eye, it's real simple. It's not too far from the top of the head here, so it's about right here. And my honest motion with it was just kind of like a teardrop almost, to the going sideways, and pretty much kind of filling it in, letting a lot of these other lines kind of just be there, these other splotches that are there. So there's a little eye, and then you can take a little bit of white if you like, kind of mix it on your plate, make it a little gray. And we're just going to kind of dot where I usually dot, which is up in the top corner. Do a little line down here near the bottom. Rinse and dry the brush off. Maybe get a little bit more white here. This one a little bit more, so that when we blend this out, it'll work. So while this is wet, I'm just gonna kind of color this eye in with the white that is on the canvas. If you want to come back into black a little bit, you can. Do the same motion, just kind of color it in here. We're giving our bat, bringing it to life with this eye. Alright. Now their nose and their mouth, it's a little different. It's a little interesting. So I come to the tip of the nose here, and I'm actually going to color it in. Good portion of it. It almost looks, it looked to me kind of like maybe a groundhog kind of snout, where a lot of it is actually covered with the black. So it comes out and around, or a pig. I almost saw a pig in it. It's just real bulky in here. It's just real dark. And they have a little chin underneath. That is the bottom part of their mouth, actually. And it just, comes out, comes up and around. So right now it's going to look a little odd because we still have to do a lot of darkening in here. But that's okay. So we got a little bit of the eye. You can get some of these dark browns and you can add some different details. Definitely go dark down here. Definitely want to be pretty dark where it's going to be dark. So let's start hitting those areas real fast. It's going to get dark down here. So I'm just dipping in the black and I'm starting to shade all these areas. I'm going to switch up my brush a little bit. Back to the first one I was using. If you're comfortable with the small one, feel free to work with that. We're going to go darker while still keeping these colors different from each other, from the stomach and from the neck and the face. You can add a little bit of yellow in there if you like. There's yellow in the original up in these areas with the brown. So you can mix the brown and the yellow to make kind of that color as well. Could throw a little bit up here if you like, but really I want to keep that brighter color down in this vicinity. But again, we're gonna stick with some shading. So keeping it real dark down along here. You can throw kind of a stomach muscle there, one there. Just keep it dark and keep those same kind of wispy strokes for the fur. Definitely going to darken the feet now a lot. The majority of them. You can leave kind of the outers with some red, but you really want to darken a lot down here. Taking a different direction. Direction's everything. Just kind of want to vaguely do some of those spots there. And then dark over here. Can leave some red on, or the brown kind of on the edges if you like. I'm going to go even darker here. It's kind of the separation of the legs and the abdomen and all that. Real dark in here. Don't be afraid to mix it up a little bit. You can still have some color here and there. Wisping it out with the fur. If you want to let these areas dry and do this, that's also a good way. I'm just on a time limit here. You can also take a little bit of a lighter brown up here, so mix some white and some brown. You can go lighter along this top edge here. Wisping it out. It's all the same technique. It never changes the technique, it just changes colors. If you wanted to add, some small wisps of black in this mane, that helps too. Right. So now you really want to look over your piece and make sure you got all these different details that you would like to have. I want to change up probably just how solid the arm kind of is at the moment. So I'm gonna add some of these browns and maybe a little bit of yellow just to switch it up. If I just go in with a dark brown again, it's honestly going to just continue what it was. So I throw down a little bit of color, dry off the brush. I don't rinse it, I just dry it on a towel real well. I'm going to use what's on the canvas to disperse what's going on the arm. I'm going to use a little bit of black to do some detailing. I don't really know what details, I just think about my arm, kind of, it's, or maybe maybe an arm or a back leg of another animal. They're pretty similar, so I'm not putting anything specific down. I'm just thinking about usually where the joints are, where the elbow is, the wrist, things like that. If you really want to go really far about it, you can actually, you know, check out the skeleton of a flying fox and, you know, see where all the joints are and everything, and kind of piece it together that way. You know, that's really in depth, and I don't discourage that at all. That'd be awesome. Throw a little bit over here real fast, and then I'm gonna go dark again. I think the last area I'm gonna hit for this video is actually gonna be up on the ear. The other ear that's behind here, real fast, I'm just gonna make it darker. Can leave a little bit of maybe a light tone on one of the sides if you'd like, but it's farther away, it's farther back. Can't see it that well. And up here, we're gonna go darker on the outside for sure. Maybe a little bit on that side over there, but here on the front, pretty dark. I know that went lighter, but I'm about to fix that real fast. Pretty dark. And on the inside, the side that is covered the most is going to be closer here. It's going to go even darker on the inside. And you can keep it lighter on the outside. That way it doesn't just disappear into the abyss of the black. We can still work with some of these lights and darks. So I also want to take a little bit of fur up into this area of the ear. Just wisping it with this small brush. Working with different levels of the colors I'm using. I'm going to add a little bit more to the snout over here. There is a little bit more. Yeah, there it is. I mean, this is a very kind of nitpicky thing, but I want to put a little bit of a mouth in here. A little bit of the separation. I'm going to put that for starters. And real quick, I'm going to darken it up a bit. So I took some black on this brush, just pushing it in, leaving a little bit of white. Hopefully that was seeable. Let's see. Yep. Yeah. So that is pretty much the bat. If anybody has questions or is doing this, I really want to see your outcome. I really want to see what you came up with. This was such a fun piece, honestly, and it conveyed some feelings that were pent up that I had to get out. So thank you for suggesting it and this specific fox so much. Thank you. And don't forget to sign your bottom right hand corner with your initials. And don't forget your edges. If you didn't do your edges or your bottom edge, make sure you do those. And show me what you got. The next video will probably be Monday. If anybody has any requests or ideas or anything like that, please let me know. I definitely want to do some more of what everybody else is kind of thinking. So let me know, and I will see you all very soon. Thank you so much. I'll get this up on YouTube as soon as possible. So I'll see you later.